Let's go. Anyways, Cheryl here, live at 5 for a Friday in January. I guess it's the last Friday in January, but how's everybody doing? How's it going? Well, sure is still interesting times. Interesting times. I don't know if any of you are very familiar with why a police officer can pull you over, but can a police officer pull you over if you pass them on the road? That is what one police officer told my uncle the other day, or earlier in the week, that yes, he's not allowed to pass a police officer. So if you know the answer to that question, I almost, if I have time permitting, call a local police station and ask them about that, or even go online. But I think I'd rather call them. So here we are. It's a Friday, and if you saw what I'm kind of going to talk about here, I was out driving today. This is why I look like this, because I was actually up and out this morning. Today was to get the spring water, and then I met up with my cousin. She helped me get the water, and then we went for a long walk on the trail that's near where my father is, and it's absolutely beautiful. And then like forests of cedar, and we went off the trail a little bit, and it was good. So that's why I'm not even taking my hat off for all the hours that I've actually had it on today. And plus it was only 15 minutes ago. I thought if I'm home in time, I'm going to do it live at 5 today. So again, how is everybody doing? It's still interesting times, and when I drive and I listen to the classical music, along with that I get advertising, I get news. Yes, I get to listen to the music, and some of that news is the government-funded news. So if you're familiar with that, government-funded advertising, it's interesting. You know, probably because I don't watch mainstream news, it gives me enough of an update, but I just sometimes have to turn it off because of just their tone, the drama, you know, what they're talking about. And if you're not, you know, the numbers don't come down, we're going to have to airlines, and you're gonna have to, and it's like, oh, it just drives me crazy sometimes. But if you're on, I didn't check to see if it was public or private, so if you're on here, say a quick hello, and then I'll know I'm on, because this is the new system, and for some reason they do not let me see who's on. I really liked the way it was in the old way, and I did try to find out where I could probably see some of this, but I can't, and I'm just going to kind of see in here viewing. Let's see if I can actually allow viewers to no. Okay, so we'll just go with it. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about, because one of the advertisings, actually just about every time I'm in the car, truck here, just going, one of the key advertisements, if we're going to say it that way, that comes on is about helping men, helping men. And every time I listen to it, I go, well, okay, people got to think about this a little bit harder, or even think about it at all. But over the years, I hear these, you get these pills, and we have this new treatment, and it's improved circulation and all of this. And then I want to just go back to this plain, simple, common sense scenario about the sex, and that is the mere fact, and we're not supposed to be necessarily performing, I'll call it that, forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. I mean, there is, if we look at animals in nature, and if I look at now remember I have the book club, the Awakening Book Club, and we're doing the Anastasia series. And in here, they talk a little bit about the purpose of sex. Now, we seem to have that kind of word. Everything's made up, right? So that's a made-up word. But the idea of conceiving, the idea of lovemaking, they call it sex, and over here that. But and what do they say? I laugh at this because when you go into a party, there's 3 things you're not supposed to talk about, because why? And why is it the sex you don't talk about? I think it's primarily because it does get people thinking about it. And it's probably not the environment to be thinking about it, to tell you the truth, with a lot of, you know, people around. Just isn't. It's more, as an Anastasia book, it's more of an intimate thing. Essentially, it's an intimate thing. But like addictions and you know, that kind of thing, and the pleasure that comes from drinking, drugs, whatever it is, gambling, all those, the pleasure, it's you know, it does take people away from their pain. We have to say that. So the idea, what I want to come on here, is in the environment, in our own environment, in our world or global environment, animals, they really only have sex when they're looking, you know, it's that time to think about pups in the case of dogs and other animals as well, whatever they're called. And there's that, it's like the cycle of life, you know, comes into play, and there's timing for that. And quite often, no, they're not doing it any other time than that. So now that I have gone through my life, and I always think that can't really talk about something unless I actually go through it, but just doing that, then I can have my own experience and all my thinking and whatever. But there is an understanding that there's a reason, you know, there's a reason intimacy and all of that comes into play, and for the purpose, the key purpose is supposed to come into play. That's not to say you don't have to change everything, but what I disagree with is I disagree with the fact that you have to, right? That people feel they have to. And maybe one wants, maybe did, you know, so you kind of change. I know that for a fact. You kind of change in how you're thinking about things. And I think it is a very natural thing, to tell you the truth. Extremely natural. So I'm just kind of coming on and talking from that point, is that there is nature kicking in here. And that the whole needing to perform, and yep, you should be, and is, you know, a lot of BS. And I want, you know, if we're thinking about true, and being true to our nature, then something to consider about. And it just so happens at the same time I was thinking about, I mean, a commercial came on, but I was also thinking about the whole raising children thing. One of the gentlemen in the book club purchased the whole series of the Anastasia books, and his daughter just got married in Ireland. I mean, she's living there, but they got married, her and her fiance got married there in Ireland. And Anastasia series is very good for that. So anybody who's thinking about children, maybe in the early stages of it's never too late. But the idea is, if you want to understand how to raise children under more natural laws, this is a great series to read, the Anastasia Ringing Cedars series. But there's another good book. When I read this book a number of years ago, I don't know, about 12 years ago, I'm not even sure. Am I alone on here? Because I don't see any eyes, and I didn't look to see if I was. I've had some crazy things happen with Facebook, trying to get on the messenger part, trying to this, and maybe they actually made it private. I don't know. So hopefully not, but if somebody's on and you come on, then say hello. But here's another book. If you're thinking about raising children, and you think you're going to have children at some point, write down this book, and because it's an awesome book, I'm going to say what the name. I'm going to show you the picture in a moment. If the world could be saved by a book, this just might be the book. John Holt. I will say it is a very good book. In Search of Happiness Lost. Now, Jean Liedloff, and I could try and remember the story, but she spent 2.5 years in the South American jungle, living with Stone Age Indians, and the experience demolished her Western preconceptions of how we should live, and led her to a radically different view of what human nature really is. She offers a new understanding of how we have lost much of our natural well-being and shows us practical ways to regain our children and for ourselves. She ended up going down there, and because she wanted to go down there for a certain reason, she ended up in this environment. It wasn't initially that way, so I'm going to show you the book. But Child Care Anthropology, it's a great name for it. But what I'm going to say is, if you think you're going to have children one day, write this book down. If you are in the works of having children, or even wanting to have more children, your children are young, this is a good book to get. If you are a practitioner wanting to help other people about children rearing or whatever it is, this is a good book. No matter any time, I read it when my children were, I guess, yeah, 7 or 8 or something like that. But the idea is the environment. We're not like these Indians are in that kind of environment as well. But it's not even that. It's the attitude that comes with this book. So please write this book down. This book is one of the books I give. If I had any client that was looking to have children, I always recommended this book. This is one of my top books. Okay, top 5 books. Oh, hi, Gordon. Yes, you're here and you're listening to you. Great. Well, thank you for coming on. I should have checked whether or not it mentioned private or public, but this is an awesome book. Now, true to, and that's all I'm going to say about raising children, but I want to just, for those who kind of read it after the fact, in here, this author actually got hate mail. And the reason why she got hate mail is because people had read it after they had raised their children and were guilty and somewhat angry they didn't have this information earlier. I just want to say that because the truth of the matter sometimes is after the fact, if we read some good information, you know how they say, well, I wish I had known that then. It's never too late. The idea is you then, there's a child within you and they're still your children and it's still very informative. Yeah, so your mind might want to go that way, but I want to say that about that. Now, usually I bring up something new, right, or something different, and I want to show you something. I just pulled it out of the cupboard, and it's a antique. Let's say it's probably 100 years old, and it was purchased at the auction at the Casa Loma, and they were auctioning off items that Sir Henry Pellet and his wife had purchased. They went bankrupt. So if you know about the Casa Loma here in Toronto, or Canada's castle in that case, Casa Loma it looks like a castle, it's huge, but he couldn't finish it and he went bankrupt. And this is to do with investments that kind of went sideways or went down, and he had to sell it. So they actually had an auction, and a neighbor of ours and friends of ours, mother was actually attended the auction back in the 1930s and purchased at least this item that I'm going to show you, maybe more, I don't know. And she gave one to my husband. So I grabbed it out of the cupboard, and I want to show it to you so that it's crystal, but it's very pretty. It's very pretty. Let me just see if we can get some, if it's going to, I don't know if it'll give us a little bit, but you can see it there. It's very, very pretty, very dainty, but just something different. It's got some crosses, but it's I think it's crystal. Probably could ding it, ding. Don't want to break it. Okay, so we've talked about the SEX. We've talked about raising children, and the third thing I wanted to talk about was I was just saying the mighty Amazon. And in some ways you might think the Amazon, the river, and this is supposedly, as far as the amount of water that comes out of it, is the most. It's 4,000 kilometers, 4,000 miles, 6,400 kilometers. Is that how it works? Or the other way around? Something like that. Miles less, kilometers more. So the idea is it's long. and it goes in South America. But we also have something else on this planet right now when we think of the technocracy that's kind of coming in. And it is also playing its mighty cards as I speak, and has been for a very long time. And that is, yes, the mighty Amazon, but not the river. And more as I kind of just sit back and listen and think about kind of what's going on in this planet, I so want to support the small guys, the local guys, more and more, even if I have to spend whatever, this much more, that much more, because at the end of the day, how much stuff we buy is, yeah, some people will admit we buy way too much stuff, but we're being guided to buy stuff. That's why the whole advertising, that's why they want to track you, that's why they want to know what you're doing, what are you searching up, and so they can tailor and just get you thinking, wanting to buy stuff. But we don't need as much stuff. So I figure if I buy a whole lot less stuff, and not that I'm a big, I actually don't buy a lot of stuff, but the idea is then we can, take that same amount of money. If you buy less stuff, you take that, and you can get better quality, perhaps, or support the local guys, right? Support the local guys. And there's obviously employees, we can take it down. There's a number of employees that are being hired by certain companies in the area that gives a number of jobs. And I can see that being instrumental in how we would think about things. It would be important that way to support the people who have kind of jobs. So I'm thinking about it. But what I'm thinking about more and more, talking to people more and more, is if you had to be, and I know I've talked about this before, an entrepreneur, what would you do? What would you do? What are the things that you would do? And that's where I kind of just want to, I think there's so many things. Gordon's on here, even just being an actor. Typically, you're self-employed. So when I did acting, modeling, whatever, when I did that back when, I was self-employed. So most of in the artist field are self-employed. So even if you had a manager, that's not, I can't remember what I called them anyway, but there was, I'd call up, they'd call me up, and they would, tell me where to go audition and stuff like that. But even though there was that, they got a cut, of course, but it was still self-employed. So you were able to write off all kinds of things, and that's the nice thing about being an entrepreneur. So in that field, but there's, we're going to make up stuff. Let's just start making up entrepreneurs. Where do they need? Where did it, what is Amazon? And let's just get that ball rolling. Get that train, leaving the train station. Think of it. So homework for all of us. I know I moved from corporate to an entrepreneur. And the idea is, what would you do if you could be an entrepreneur? What would you do? There's so many of the skills, absolutely. Like, they're small businesses. If you think of electricians, I think the fellow who came in and fixed my fridge, which has gone on the fritz again, that's a small business. So a lot of those skills, plumbers, electricians, all the skills, he worked, small, fridges, whatever, the mechanics, and mechanics themselves. So the number of these skills are, they're self-employed. They're small businesses. And then we have all the restaurants, tons of restaurants that are small businesses, ownership. And so ask questions. We know which ones for the most part are the big companies. But at this time, and more than ever, to support the local businesses and the small businesses, that would be awesome. That would be great. I think it's going to take two, from both sides. It's going to take the small businesses to be motivated, positive, and get going and open when they eventually, just as they're doing right now, they're setting it up for Canada, just like in Poland and other countries, I think France too, where they just open up all the businesses. Now, maybe some will choose not to for the reasons they will, but they're just going to kind of open, and because they can, and so they should. And So it's to go in and actually support them, at that time. But I wouldn't make it such a big deal. If you're part of these companies, small businesses that are planning to open up when they have that reopening, I'll put the link down below. When that kind of happens, you don't need to be loud about it. You don't need to tell people so much about it. Now, what I'm hearing, and I read this, is that here's a gym, and I think they're doing online. They're doing online. So therefore, because they're online and they're servicing, I think it's a CrossFit gym. But the people that go to them right now, if they opened up illegally, would drop off because of the jobs and the positions they have. They wouldn't be able to support that. So in some ways, we just kind of have to step back and go, okay, there are going to be certain businesses that are stuck between a rock and a hard place and cannot open. We can't fault them for that. We can't judge them for that. That is something they just have to do. And there may be, that's a CrossFit gym, so that's that particular, maybe gyms in general, I don't know, or maybe a number of the gyms fall into that category. But maybe other businesses as well, where the local community are all upset and fear of what's going on. And they're going to take the hard, how can I say it? They're going to take the hard position that, well, I'm not going to shop anymore if you're open. That's your part. So people were going to have to definitely be okay with that. Now, I have downloaded the VARS, which is Report an Adverse Event, a vaccine event. I've downloaded for 2020, and I've downloaded it for January. And so I could easily, but I'm not, it's going to bore you to tears to go through, but I will put the links down so you can see some of the things that are happening with the vaccines. Now, the interesting thing about this reporting system, yes, anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. So if you're in Canada, you got to look for that vaccine adverse, or even drug, even medicine. Even if you think your doctor's going to report it. Because that way they have two records. What if they don't? So just anything that comes up, you can see some of them are, it's 3 hours later they passed, and they kind of put a lot of detail in there. They had this comorbidity, they had this, they're on these drugs, they're 92, they're 96, there's all of this, and they passed. So, and it was just after the vaccine when things got worse, or they couldn't breathe, shortness of breath, heavy in the legs. So you start to see some of the similars. But what's interesting is you'll see quite often they'll say no autopsy going to be done. We don't feel, there's no proof it's the vaccine. You could say that all the time in a number of cases. But my question is, why are they giving the elderly? Seriously, why are they giving people who are on their last legs, let's call it, any vaccine at all, when there's bound to be a side effect? I don't get it. I don't get it. That they would actually give people who are very ill, why would they give the vaccines? Maybe it's protocol, but that was what I was saying the other day about Norway, a number of deaths, and California, a number of deaths, and they actually had mentioned in there, maybe we shouldn't be giving the elderly vaccines. Well, no guff, Sherlock. This makes complete sense to me. But in California, man dies several hours after receiving the COVID vaccine. So you're going to see, and I know people are looking at this, and found here, this is January the 15th release of VAERS. I'm going to put this link up as well. Found 181 cases where vaccine targets COVID-19 injection. I'm going to say injection wherever there is the thing where the injection targets the C word, and patients died. So age 17 to 44, 5. I sure wouldn't want to be the mother or the father or the children of somebody passing, that young. What if you're like a mother of, you're 35 and you're a mother of 3 young kids or something. Age 44 to 65, 29 people. Now, age 44 to 65 is young. Age 65 to 75, 25. Age 75 plus, 87. And unknown is 35. So I'm not sure the unknown where they kind of fit in, but if you just look at the 75 plus years, at 87, that's almost 50% of the numbers are over that. And I mean, it could be anywhere. But earlier this month, the death of 56-year-old doctor, 15 days after receiving the Pfizer vaccine, on numerous deaths among the elderly in Norway and Germany. So that's the reporting there. Article in Jerusalem Post, 17-year-old who was hospitalized in intensive care after receiving the second dose. So we're not only talking just one dose here, we're talking not just the one dose, but I remember I looked on the VARs and a lot of it was after the first dose. But for this injection, there's 2. And then, they kind of say these, well, even the Norway thing said, well, we don't believe it's the vaccine. Most of these people have all these comorbidities and other things going on, but why give it to them in the first place? It doesn't make sense. So they're continuing to give them. But again, if things are nefarious, as they are, then they're going to just carry on. They're just going to carry on. I mean, they had all kinds of ill effects when they did the studies that they didn't report on. They're not saying anything in the mainstream news. CDC reported 21 cases of anaphylaxis, which is like an allergy reaction in people who received the injection between December 14th, 23rd, and another 10 between December 23rd and January the 10th. So it is a life-threatening allergic reaction. Anaphylaxis is life-threatening, and I'm just, this is where I kind of send out a prayer to my friend who came with on Scotland trip. And when she gets back, her son, they were just going through to see if he had any allergies at all. And he did. He ended up having an allergy. I can't remember if it was peanut or it was something like that. And they took their sweet time getting these results back. And in the meantime, yes, her son, I think he was only in his 30s or late 30s or something like that. So it's sad. So there is some video out there. Don't know if I have it up anymore, but it does go through if you have any allergies whatsoever, then you shouldn't be taking this for sure. And there was actually a number of things that came on, certain conditions, heart conditions, things like that, and not to take it. But the idea is to know what's in it, aside from the mRNA, which doesn't really tell you much. That's like me giving you a product of something and saying spices on the label. You have no idea what they're wrapping up in the spices. Now, once upon a time, they did break it out. And then all of a sudden I started recognizing spices. Well, you don't know what's in the spices, and there's certain things that can be spices, but they're not good for you under the title or label of spices. So that's a little bit about that, but definitely hearing from Trudeau on the news about not traveling, and you're going to have to take a test and all those things. So if you end up, and then if you refuse the test, they're going to give out big fines. If you refuse the test, they're going to give out big fines. And what you're supposed to do is get the test, and this is international travelers. I guess if you're out of the country and you're Canadian and you're coming in from international, probably the same for you as well. But then you have to go to a hotel room for a few days before your test comes back. And you're going to have to foot the bill, which he says $2,000. it's almost, this is just, again, one of, I'm listening to the radio and that's what kind of comes on. And, they're trying to put all this enacting in a week, next month and things, crazy. So, vaccine deaths rise in Norway. Yeah, people 75 and over. So, it raises concerns. Now, it still throws me for a loop that they're calling it the jab. Ay, ay, ay. Anyway, so down in here, I'll post this as well, where they don't feel it has any connection. But most people are experiencing. So there are 13 deaths that have been assessed, and we are aware of another 16 deaths that are currently being assessed. The agency said all the reported deaths related to elderly people with serious basic disorders. Well, why give it to them in the first place? It said most people have experienced the expected side effects of the vaccine, such as nausea and vomiting, fever, local reactions at the injection site, and worsening of their underlying condition. Now, I'm not sure if they're talking about most people that are dead, or they're talking about in general experiencing. So I don't know about you, but nauseous and vomiting tells me that my body doesn't like what's going in there. That's a serious, to me, nauseous and vomiting. Vomiting is a survival mechanism. So if the body's doing that, I can see you have a little reaction, if they're putting in, but they're not even putting in the live or dead material. It's just a little piece of mRNA. So that doesn't really even make sense at all. So some of the things that they talk about, I'm going to see if this comes up fast enough, but in the meantime I'll talk it. So Wayne Gretzky, I think his father was named Walter, but Wayne Gretzky is starting to get into the cannabis, and apparently, I don't know if I'm freezing on you here, maybe not. Long list of side effects on the FDA site. Yeah, it's another good site to go on. But yeah, our Wayne Gretzky would go Wayne. But he has the kind of thing is not one more suicide. Big Pharma is outraged over Wayne Gretzky's newest business, which is, from what I can gather from here, it's a more natural scenario of hemp. Now, I attended a meeting one time with some pharmaceutical researchers, and they said they had found a nutraceutical, so you could actually sell it in the health food store. That is the way they process the hemp. It wouldn't give you the side effects of the CBD. But I don't know what Wayne is doing. But listen, if it's not one, I agree. If it's really going to help with no more suicides, and the big pharma doesn't actually get their money, they have a monopoly on medicine or something? You would think they do when they say that. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I have open up here. So I guess the idea here is we're going to keep our eye on what is going on and see what's going on. There's a number of things that are coming up. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we're going to go there. That's where we're going to leave it today, and then we're going to tell some jokes. So unless there's the usual, any comments, any questions, you can put them down. Yep, my garb is because I went and collected spring water today. Went out for a long walk with my with cousin. So I'm going to go into some jokes. Oh, I want to just talk about one more book. But for those who maybe came on late, this is a glass for Casa Loma. So it was that they had to sell off everything because he went bankrupt, Sir Henry Pellet. And this is just one of the glasses that was picked up by a friend of ours' mother. And I guess she gave one to my husband. Maybe she's just giving them away. This is one of the glasses they had in there. But they had to auction them off because he was gone bankrupt. And I don't know if he was trying to raise enough money or they needed to take care of the place or finish it or something like that. But here's another good book that I really like beside Anastasia, and it could be helpful in raising children, raising families, having relationships, and how we interact with our planet. And this is Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. Now, I didn't get the book initially. I rented it from the library just to check it out, but it was one of my stranger conversations, meeting the stranger, going out for a dog walk, and he mentioned it after we were kind of getting into metaphysical talking and stuff, and it's really good. I really enjoyed it, and so I ended up buying it because I had a gift card, and then I bought a couple of other books as well. So let's go through some jokes here. Let's go through some jokes. Which one first? Okay. Why did the bee get married? Why did the bee get married? Because he found his honey. Now that's one you could tell your children. Actually, most of these you can tell your children, but not all. A photon checks into a hotel, and the bellhop asks him if he has any luggage. So a photon checks into a hotel, and the bellhop asks him if he has any luggage. And the photon replies, "No, thanks, I'm traveling light." It's a science one. I'm actually going to read another one too. So I read that. But this one I kind of posted up. But if I'd like to get a job cleaning mirrors, it's just something I can see myself doing. And I'm going to do a fourth one. What do you call an introverted slug? What do you call an introverted slug? A snail. Let's go for a fifth one, just because it's fun. We can do that. Why did the octopus beat the shark in a fight? Why did the octopus beat the shark in a fight? Because it was well armed. There you go. You gotta like telling jokes. Anyway, I'm going to wish everybody a wonderful Friday night and a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Enjoy. I know it's supposed to be very, very cold, but if you dress up in snow pants and hat and scarf and a few layers, and yeah, I had my snow gloves on. My hands are burning now because they've been out in the cold when I do the water, and they get to a point where they're so cold that they just go on fire. But it's not a bad thing. So to spend more time outside, the body will learn to heat up, which is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. So take care, everyone. Any comments, any questions, any shares, feel free to post them down below, and I'll grab a few of these links right now and put them down below. But take care, enjoy, be calm, find some joy, and yeah, imagine ourselves, moving forward, just kidding, moving forward in a grand way. Take care. Bye for now.